Sunnahfollowers, protectors of the Sunnah. Sunnahfollowers, protectors of the Sunnah. Inna alhamdulillah wa salat wa salam ala wa rasulullah. Today is going to be the last lecture on ablution. Today will be the last lecture on ablution. And what I'm going to do, guys, is give you a quiz, an exam tomorrow, not a quiz. It's going to be an exam to cover the basic things that we've talked about ablution. And then we're going to move on to understanding the ghusl, or understanding how to bathe. Okay? So, but I'm going to take it whenever you're teaching fiqh or understanding to you're trying to help others to understand the deen, you want to take it slow. Okay? So, tomorrow there will be a final exam to cover everything that we talked about ablution or making wudu. Okay? And the sunans of it, the pillars of it, the recommendations, whether situations in which wudu is needed, situations in which they're not. And we're going to also cover this part too, which is what I'm going to speak about today, the wiping over the socks and the shoes. And I want you guys to pay close attention to today's lecture, because you're going to find out many things that were not true. Just like there's many things you've been told about what breaks the wudu that was not true, you're going to be shocked to find that many things that you've been told about wiping over socks and shoes were not true as well. And again, my teachings are directly from the Sunnah. I am not teaching you from a book written by Sheikh so and so. I am teaching you directly from the hadiths of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with the understanding of the companions. Okay, so let's get started on today's. Okay, first of all, before I go over the rulings concerning wiping over the socks, there's a few things I want to mention for you to note about the importance of wudu. Number one, remember this was a question. I put this on here today based on yesterday's comments. Sister Vicky, I should have put the laughing on here. Tomorrow I'll probably add laughing. But number one, it is permissible to speak while making wudu. That was a question that somebody asked yesterday. Is it true, Sister Layla, that we cannot talk when we make wudu? Again, if somebody tells you that something is haram, they have to bring forth the clear evidence. They have to bring forth the hadith where the Prophet said it is haram to speak while making wudu. There is nothing from the authentic hadiths that says it is haram to talk while making wudu. I can sit there and make wudu, and I can tell my children, look, get down from there and go do this. I can talk to my husband while I'm making wudu. I can talk to you while I'm making wudu. There is nothing that says I can't do that. So I wanted to emphasize this. It is permissible to speak while making wudu. Okay? Also, remember we talked about how supplicating while you're washing your body parts, there is no authentic hadith that says that either. Nowhere did the Prophet say that you have to make supplications while you wash your body parts. Remember, the only supplications that we need to be using are the ones mentioned by the Prophet, the supplication after the wudu. Okay. Also, another point. If the person who is making wudu has doubt, this was a question that came up too from one of the students here. So I made this a note of importance. If the person who is making wudu has a doubt concerning how many times he washed a particular body part, then you just guess. just guess. You don't have to redo the wudu. I think Izdahar asked this. What if you are unsure? I don't know if I washed it 3 times or 4 times, and just guess. And that was a question that Sheikh Morsi answered for you guys here too on the telephone. If even if you go over the 3 times, you're not sure if you did or not. Don't worry about it. Just go by the number you think that you were certain of. Because again, Allah doesn't punish us or hold us accountable for the mistakes we make or the things we forget. Okay? And also, number 4, which I'm going to do a lecture series on menstruation because this is a question that keeps coming up. People with unusual circumstances, such as women who are suffering from prolonged periods, or also as Sister Sandra was speaking about today, people who cannot control their union, your urine, your bladder, you can't hold your bladder well. These people should make wudu before each prayer, whether your problem exists all the time or part of the time. Do you understand that, Sandra? If you're a person that leaks, some say, for example, you have a problem holding your blood, it leaks. It's just that when it's time to make wudu, when it's time to pray, simply, wash yourself up and make wudu again. Your prayer will be accepted even if your problem is occurring. Do y'all understand what that means? That means even if your bladder is leaking, and I want you to listen to this, Sister Khadijah. Remember, Khadijah, we had a problem with you understanding the urine in the clothes. Well, guess what, Khadijah? To show how merciful Allah is. If you're a person that suffers with leaking bladder, all you have to do is make wudu before the prayer. And even if your bladder leaks urine, your prayer is still accepted. Do you hear me, Khadijah? Does everyone here hear what I'm saying? If you are a person who cannot control your bladder, you have a problem with your bladder leaking, all you have to do is make wudu before the prayer. And even if your bladder should leak, even if urine should come out of you while you're praying, guess what? Your prayer is accepted because Allah does not punish you for what you cannot control. Does everyone understand that? You can't control that. And again, everything is based on your intentions. Your intentions are to perform a perfect prayer. You can't control the fact that your bladder is weak. You made wudu and you're now praying. So guess what? If your bladder leaks, it's still accepted. That hadith about people being punished in their graves for urine in their clothes was about the Christians, because the Christians did not purify themselves before they prayed. They would call upon Allah and they didn't care if they were dirty, they didn't care if they were clean. And that's why they were being punished in their graves. That hadith is not about the leaking urine. It's about being unclean when you stand before Allah. Okay? So I had to put that in there based on yesterday. And we'll talk more about that when I go over the menses with you guys. And then another point here that I want you to remember is you can be assisted by others in making wudu. This was a question that one of the sisters asked. What if you're in the hospital? Say, for example, myself. When I was having my surgery done, I could not move. So my daughter helped me to make wudu. She helped me sit up and she helped put the water on my arms and rubbed it over my arm. My mother helped me. She did my feet. So others can help you to make wudu if you're unable to make it yourself. And finally, another point, because one of the sisters asked this, you can dry yourself off. Believe it or not, guys, there are some fanatical Muslims out there that tell you that when you make wudu, you have to let the water run off of you. You cannot dry yourself off. That is not true. You can use a towel to dry yourself. There is no hadith where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said you cannot dry the water off from your wudu. That's ridiculous. Okay, so I want you guys to remember these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. And I'm going to put these 6 points on the exam tomorrow. So remember them. Okay? Also, now what we're going to do is go into the rulings in regards to wiping over the socks. This is a big question that we get a lot. I want you guys to understand wiping over the socks is a part of the Sunnah. Imam Nawawi, who was a scholar of Hadith, he says all those who qualify agree that he's talking about all the scholars of Hadith agree that it is allowed to wipe over the socks when you're traveling, and you can wipe over your socks if you're at home, even if you are a woman who is living in your house and you just don't want to do wudu over your feet, you can wipe over your socks. And this is an important point because there are some Muslims out there who will say, "Oh, you can only do it if you're traveling. You're sitting at home, you're lazy. Take your socks off and make wudu over your feet." You don't have to do that. Also, and this is what all the scholars of the Hadith are in agreement of. And also, you will come upon some people who are Shiites, or the Qadarites. They say that you can't do it, especially the Qadarites. I can tell when a person belongs to that sect because they'll say, Astaghfirullah, you cannot wipe over your socks. But their rejection is not valid. Listen to what Ibn Hajar said. He said, all the scholars and preservers of Hadith are in agreement that wiping over the socks has come through many, many, many transmissions. So there's many, many companions who've talked about the legitimacy of wiping over the socks, guys. In fact, there's over 80 companions. 80 companions. Over 80 companions who have narrated about the wiping over the socks. And guess what, guys? Of those 80, all 10 of the people who were promised paradise. Remember, we talked about those companions who were given the good news of paradise? They too said it's permissible. So the next time you hear a Muslim tell you that you can't wipe over your socks, they're probably a Coleridge. Okay? You can wipe over your socks, and you don't have to be a traveler. And what is the strongest hadith on this? Well, the strongest hadith is the following hadith narrated by, whereas Jarir ibn Abdullah, he urinated and then he made wudu. And when he made wudu, he wiped over his socks. And somebody asked him, he said, "Why are you wiping over your socks when you've urinated?" He said, "I'm doing this because the prophet urinated and did it." Okay, and so again, that's the most strongest hadith of all. So there's the proof. You can wipe over your socks. Okay, and again, the same applies to the shoes. The same applies to the shoes. You can make wudu over your shoes. You don't have to take your shoes off. If you're out at work or even in the house, if you're wearing your shoes, sometimes you have to wear your shoes in your house, especially if you got bad feet like I have. You got to wear certain shoes. You can make wudu over the top of your shoes. And there's many, many hadiths from this. For example, Abu Dawood said wiping over the shoes has been done by Ali. Ali used to do it. Ibn Masud used to do it. Al-Bara ibn Azib used to do it. Anas ibn Malik did it. Abu Umayma did it. Sahel ibn Saud and Amir ibn Harith, all of those people wiped over their shoes. So when people tell you that you can't wipe over your shoes, they don't know what they're talking about. Also, guys, Umar and Ibn Abbas and Ibn Umar, they all have done it too. Okay, so again, guys, I want you guys to understand that when people talk about this religion, they have to bring forth the evidence. And I want you guys to know that the scholars of Hadith are all in agreement that there is no difference between wiping over the socks or the shoe. They're the same. Wiping over the sock is the same as wiping over the shoe. What about this? How many of you have been told that it has to be a certain kind of sock? How many of you were told that it has to be leather socks? You have to go on the internet and order koofs. from Saudi Arabia. How many of you were told that nonsense? Well, guess what? It doesn't matter what type of fabric the sock is made of. Also, guys, it can be any foot covering. It can be stockings. It can be pantyhose. It can be whatever. Anything that covers the foot can be wiped over. A sock, a shoe, a stocking, pantyhose. It doesn't matter what the fabric is. It can be made out of silk. It can be made out of rayon. It can be made out of cotton. It doesn't matter. Anything used to avoid the cold or protect the wound can be wiped over. And guess what, guys? Even if it had holes in it. That's why, look at this picture. This is a little thin stocking with a hole. Guess what? I can wipe over that too. It doesn't have to not be free of holes. I want you guys to listen to what Ibn Taymiyyah said about it. He said it is all right to wipe over foot coverings because it takes precedence over wiping socks or slippers. So any type of covering of the foot. If I had a cast on my foot, guys, if my foot was broken, I had a cast on it, I can wipe over the cast. Any type of covering over the foot can be wiped over. Okay? He said if wiping over the stop socks and slippers is allowed, then wiping over any foot covering should come first. Whoever claims that there is a consensus on the impermissibility of it, he said this is a person that has no knowledge or understanding of the religion. So again, anyone that tells you that you can't that it has to be a certain type of sock, a certain type of shoe, that they don't know anything about the deen. Okay? And again, even if there are holes or cuts in the sock, even if there are holes in my stocking, even if there are holes in my covering, I can still wipe over them. Okay? Listen to what Authority said. He said the slippers of the immigrants and the helpers, he's talking about the companions, they had holes and cuts in theirs. So again, most of the things you've heard about wiping over socks and shoes is not correct. It doesn't have to be a certain type of shoe, a certain type of sock, and it doesn't even have to be a shoe or a sock. It can be anything that is covering the foot. Anything that you are wearing to cover the foot. Even those booties, those little booties we put on our feet and when we're cold in the wintertime, it could be those. You can wipe over the top of them. Okay? And also, guys, guess what? Many of you may have been told that whatever covering that you wear on the foot, it has to cover the ankle too. Guess what? That's not correct. I repeat, for those people who have told you that a foot covering must cover the foot to the ankle, that is not correct because Ibn Taymiyyah has proven, he's proven that any so-called hadiths about covering from the whole foot and the ankle is not authentic. They're weak. Okay? That's a shocker for many of you. Just like the holes were a shocker for many of you. Okay? So what are the conditions for wiping over my sock or my shoe or my stockings or my booties or whatever, my cast or whatever? Okay? Well, you must have put it on while you were in a state of purity. What does that mean? Say, for example, I woke up this morning and made fajr, and I did wudu, I washed my feet. Well, when I get through with my prayer, I put on some socks. That's the condition. You must have been in a state of purity. That means you must have made wudu before you have put them socks on. Does everybody understand that? You must have made wudu and been in a state of purity before you put those socks on. Where's my evidence? Well, said El Mughira, he said, I was with the Prophet one night during an expedition. I poured water for him to make wudu. He washed his face and arms and he wiped his head. Then I went to take off his socks. He said, leave them on. As I put them on while I was in a state of purity, and he just wiped over them. There it is. So it has to be, you have to have been in a state of purity. In other words, you must have made wudu and been in a state of purity before you put them on. Also, another hadith, we said, O Prophet of Allah, can we wipe over our socks? He said, yes, if you put them on while you were in a state of purity. So that's the condition right there. You have to have made wudu and been in a state of purity when you put them on. And again, I want you guys to know the stipulations by the jurors that the socks must completely cover the foot to the ankle and that you must be able to walk a distance in them has been proven by Ibn Taymiyyah in his El Fatwa to be weak. He's proven it. Proven it. So again, we have to teach from the proper sources. And that brings us to the next point. When we wipe over the sock or the stocking or the cast or the shoe, where do we wipe? Well, Islamic law says the top of the sock is all you have to do, or the top of the shoe. El Mughira told us, I saw the Prophet of Allah wipe over the top of his socks. The bottom of the shoe or the bottom of the foot covering is not to be wiped at all. We do not do the bottom, we just do the top part. And again, when we wipe, I want you to pay attention. There's no certain way to do it. Brother Muhammad, pay attention. Because a lot of times we try to make religion hard by saying, well, is there a certain way to wipe? Wipe means wipe. There's no hadith that says you have to go from the front to the back and back to the front for the foot. No, just wipe your hand over the top of the foot. That's all. Wet your hand with water and then take your hand, your wet hand, and wipe it over the top of the foot. That's it. Ain't nothing else to do. And you don't have to do the bottom. And that shows the wisdom of Allah, like we talked about yesterday. You know, some things you may not understand. Like we had a problem understanding that hadith about the Christians being punished in the grave for the urine and the stains in their underwear. Well, like Ali said, if our religion was based on our opinion or our interpretations, then we would think to wipe the bottom of the sock because we would think the bottom is what gets dirty. Okay, but the reality is the religion is not based on our thoughts or our understanding. Allah tells us whatever walks across the dirt purifies it. So that's why we don't have to do the bottom of the foot. It's being purified from the dirt. Only thing we have to purify is the top by wiping over it. Does everybody understand that? So don't try to figure out and try to guess what Allah's wisdom is. Just accept what He says. Okay? And how long can a person wipe? Well, if you are not traveling, that means if you're at home, like I am, you can wipe over your foot covering for one day and a night. So that means I made Fajr this morning and I whitewashed my foot as part of my wudu. So I got my slippers on, my socks on for the rest of the day. I can continue to wipe over my sock, for the rest of the day, okay, and the night. But if I'm traveling, you can do it for 3 days and for 3 nights. And where's the proof? Well, Safwan ibn Asal, he said, we were commanded by the Prophet to wipe over the socks if we were in a state of purity. See, remember that state of purity when we put them on. That means after you done made wudu and put them on, you can wipe over that socks for 3 days if we were travelers, and for one day and a night if we were non-travelers. And we did not remove them unless we were in a post-sexual impurity. So that's another thing too. Post-sexual impurity is if you have intercourse, sexual relations with your wife or your husband. That's different. And why? Because if you're having sexual intercourse, you have to take a ghusl in order to pray. A simple wudu is not enough. In order to purify yourself from intercourse is ghusl. So you're going to have to take those socks off and make a ghusl. Okay? We have another hadith where Ibn Hani said, I asked Aisha about wiping over the socks. She said for the person who is traveling, they can wipe over them for 3 days and 3 nights. For a person who is not traveling, one day and one night. And again, I give y'all the source for everything I'm teaching. Everything I'm teaching. There's no scholar of hadith who will argue anything with me because I'm providing the source. They'd be a fool to try to dispute what I'm saying. Okay? And again, after the person completes his wudu and puts on his socks or shoes, it is proper for him to wipe over them later on when he wants to make wudu. So you don't have to take them off. You just wipe over them the rest of the day. Like I've been doing. I made fajr this morning. I put on my socks. I've been making wiping over my socks for every prayer, and I'll continue to do that until next fajr. Okay. But again, if you are married and you have intercourse with your husband, you have to take them off and take a ghusl. So that's different. And again, before I leave, we talked about wiping over the turban and the hijab already, but I just threw this in here too. Remember, you can also wipe over the turban or the hijab, the same thing, as long as you have made ablution over the head. As long as you put that hijab on when you were in a state of purity, the same thing. And that's based on this hadith. I saw the Prophet wipe over his turban and his shoes. Also, the Prophet said, wipe over your shoes and your head covering. Umar once said, may Allah not purify the one who does not consider wiping over the turban to be purifying. Okay, so again, if I make wudu, uh, if I make fajr this morning, I make wudu for fajr. I've made wudu over my head and I've made wudu over my feet. So guess what? I can put my hijab on and wear it the rest of the day and make wudu over my hijab the rest of the day. Y'all understand that? You sisters out there who want to try to go natural and you didn't wonder why your husbands divorce you. Okay, if you done made wudu over your head, for Fajr and put that hijab on, that little cap on, you can make wudu over your hijab cap for the rest of the day. See how simple that is. See how easy that is. Okay? So, what invalidates the wiping? And this is very important. What makes the wiping invalid is number one, when the time comes for it to end. Remember, if you're not a traveler, 1 day and 1 night. Also, post sex impurity. If you have sexual relations, it doesn't matter if you got a hijab on or a turban on or socks or shoes on. You got to take it all off and take a ghusl. And also, what invalidates this is important to remove it or to take it off. If I'm going to take off my socks or take off my shoes, then I need to make regular wudu over my feet before putting them back on. Y'all understand? Y'all understand? The same with the hijab too. If I'm going to take that hijab off, the same thing. Then I want to do regular wudu over my head again and then put it back on. So what I do as a Muslim woman, I know a lot of you sisters wrap your hair. You wrap it and put it in a hijab and, the cap, and you can make wudu over it. Okay? But this is what invalidates it. If you have intercourse with your husband or wife, the time ends, or if you take it off. Okay? So thus, guys, this completes our series on wudu or ablution. Tomorrow, I'm going to give you a final exam to cover everything that we talked about. I want to make sure you guys understand the basics of wudu. And if you all do well on the quiz tomorrow, the exam tomorrow, if you're not confused about the basics of the wudu, then we will move on to ghusl or bathing. But we're not going to move to ghusl or bathing until you prove to me that you're ready, that you are not confused, and that you understand what the basics of what you need to know about wiping over the socks, wiping over the shoes and the hijab, the sunnahs of the wudu, the pillars of the wudu, the things that break the wudu, things that don't break the wudu that we've been told, like laughing and all that. Those are the basic things that every Muslim should know, but they don't. When you prove to me on that exam tomorrow that you understand that stuff, then we'll begin the series on ghusl or bathing. Okay? All right, so we'll stop right here for today. If you guys have Sunnah followers, protectors of the Sunnah, Sunnah followers.